Hello, friends. Do U.S. federal judges believe they run the executive branch now? That is the question that I asked on Twitter just a couple of days ago. X, formerly known as Twitter, do federal judges think they run the executive branch now? Along with this chart, which you can't read because it's in portrait and it needs to be in landscape. Let me show it to you this way. In Excel, where I made it, I titled this chart U.S. Presidential Actions Blocked by a Federal Judge, excluding Supreme Court rulings. Those are also federal judges, but it's supposed to be the Supreme Court that exercises checks and balances, usually over Congress, over the legislative branch, but also the president sometimes. Let's see. How often did a regular old federal judge, there's 670 odd federal judges, friends, depending on open positions that there may be from time to time. Well, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, John Quincy Adams, none of those presidents were ever overturned by a federal judge. They were never blocked. None of the actions they took in forming our nation's executive branch way back in the late 1700s, none of their decisions were blocked. Well, I guess by the time we got to Monroe, it was the 1800s. But let's keep going down the list. What do we got here? Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler, Polk, Taylor, Fillmore, Pierce, Buchanan, Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, number 16. Our 16th president was blocked once. Only one of the actions Abraham Lincoln took during war, during the U.S. Civil War, was blocked by a federal judge. In that case, it was Lincoln telling the military, the Northern Army generals, hey, we can suspend habeas corpus if you find saboteurs blowing up railroad tracks to destroy the Northern Army's supply lines. You can just hold them indefinitely. You don't have to charge them with a crime or have a trial or anything. Just lock them up. And a judge said, no, that's against the rules. Constitution says U.S. citizens get to have a regular, speedy trial in front of a jury of their peers, all the usual protections, right? Lincoln ignored that judge. Like the guy did the ex parte Merriman, the guy's name was Merriman, got released later that year anyhow, but not because Lincoln was bowing down before a federal judge telling him he had to. He actually ignored it and said, hey, we're at war, pal. This is war, and there's an opposing party, and they're trying to destroy my army, so I'm just going to hold them indefinitely. When was the next time a federal judge blocked an action by a U.S. president? You gotta scroll for a while. Do you think any of these presidents ever took a controversial action? Probably is the answer, right? Probably a lot of the things these presidents were doing were questionable at the time, and yet federal judges did not. Why am I bringing this up? Because we're about to see in the comments what people were telling me accounts for the current spate of, maybe I used that word wrong, I don't know, tell me what a spate is in the comments below, of federal judges blocking presidential actions. Let's keep going. FDR was president 4 times. He was elected U.S. president. And in those 4 terms, only twice did a federal judge block him. And he was growing the size of government like crazy, creating all kinds of new executive branch departments to provide employment to Americans during the Great Depression, mainly to try to get the economy back on track. 1 for Truman, none for Eisenhower, none for JFK, 1 for LBJ, only 2 for Richard Nixon. Like he's often cited as the example of one of the worst presidents, except if you talk to presidential scholars who tell you actually he was one of the better presidents. Nixon, only twice, was blocked by a U.S. federal judge. None for Carter, none for Ford, 1 for Carter. 3 for Reagan in 2 terms, 1 for Bush Sr., 5 for Bill Clinton, 8 for George W. Bush, 12 for Barack Obama. 64, if you can't see this number, if it's off the screen, let me drag my Excel window back into the frame here. All right, I'm going to have to change my zoom so that you can see the end of the bar for Donald J. Trump, our 45th and 47th president. There you go. That's the correct scale. 64 times during his first term, 14 for Joe Biden, and already 15 in 9 weeks for Donald Trump's second term in office. All of those are courtesy Grok. Here's what the data looked like when Grok provided it to me with these notes. They're pretty repetitive. At the top, there's that Merriman decision for Lincoln being the first example. And let's go see those comments where we find out what people's excuses were. Let me put the right thing back up again because I did the wrong thing. All right, I'll get rid of this and I'll scroll down and show you, not that, but I'll click through here and show you this comment from Stephen Spencer at @Spencer_SMB. In the past few decades, the president has tried to assert more and more power. The theory of the unitary executive, the judicial and legislative branches are there to counteract, but Congress has basically bowed out of its role, so it has fallen on the judiciary. Well, Congress did exercise some judgment over Trump the first time when they impeached him. They impeached him twice. Okay, but no federal judge believed that. Any of the first 15 presidents of the United States of America tried to exert too much power. Let's keep going. What else do we see here? Now I want to see what horrific thing Lincoln did. We already talked about that for a minute. Here we go. Kazo86 says, that's the beauty of checks and balances, or do you want a Putin-style system? If you really believe hundreds of federal judges are supposed to be able to single-handedly overrule presidential actions, how do you explain that no federal judge ever did during the lifetimes of any of the people who established the system of checks and balances, right? If you're Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, you were there writing the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and you were president, and none of your actions were ever blocked by a federal judge. They're the folks who made the checks and balances in the Constitution, and it was not being used for any of the first 15 presidents, right? So, yeah, checks and balances, man, but no chief executive was ever checked by the checks throughout the entire system of all the people who wrote the system of checks and balances. Make it make sense. If you know how to make it make sense, make it make sense. In the comments below, I look forward to reading your better explanations of what's going on. And with that, I will outro by thanking you for watching the video. Remind you to like the video if you liked the video. That'll help others like you who might also like the video to like the video. And a special shout out to my two executive producers, Kathy Kitchler and Rebellionaire.com, and I'll see you in the next one.